start. This meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with state of California executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Zoom is being utilized for this meeting. In case of technical issues, meetings will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible. After the meeting, we will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom. Committee members and staff are participating from remote locations. Practicing appropriate social distancing, members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom, as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Climate Action Committee may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items during the discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. All right. Carrie, can we go ahead with the roll call?
Absolutely. Sunali?
Here.
And we can hear you today. Woody Hastings?
Here.
Alex Goodman? I think I see Alex, you might be still connecting to audio. I'll move on. We know Joshua is not here today. Kenna?
Here.
Kathy Ottinger?
Here.
Lisa Pierce?
I see her.
Lisa, you're muted. Do you
Wait,
want to make this a sound
so
check?
I-
Oh, there we go.
I did unmute myself. That was weird. I said here, but and then I muted myself again. Sorry.
No worries. Dina Allen?
Here.
And Debbie Burns?
Here.
Alex Goodman?
Here.
Excellent. And we've already noted that Sarah Gurney and Joshua Somane will not be here today. I did not see Jerry Glazer here. Does anyone know if he was planning on attending?
Jerry is not going to be here today.
Okay, great. And then Jasenia Garcia, I did get an email from her earlier today, so it did sound like she was going to be here. I know she's sometimes a couple minutes late with her schedule.
All right. So Sunali, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the video, and I'm going to start that screen share, and you just let me know when to press play.
Okay, awesome. Hi, committee. I recently came to know, and my screen with that, it's hard to see. I don't think you'll be able to, but it's called What the Robin Knows, and it's by a bird tracker and naturalist named John Young, who shares about how observing just common birds can give us insight into the entire ecosystem, and also shares about, there's a little video clip we have. He's given TED Talks. He's been doing this for 40 years and just shares appreciation for how connection to nature can help with the climate situation. One of the things that I've recently, like a quote that's very simple, is what we appreciate, we protect. And so having that connection can increase our ability for compassion. So take it away, Kenna.
Can you see the video now?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Let me try this share again. Hold on. Sorry about that. I thought I was very prepared.
Well, oh.
You see it now?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Economy. Because I think, what we've lost the thread, and that's all known now. I mean, Richard Louv, as he said himself, he wrote that book, Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder, in 2005. And he said, what I'm saying is some of this research is 30 years old. None of this is new. We all know that we need nature connection to be healthy, and he puts forth, we should have a declaration at the UN just like everyone's entitled to clean air and clean water, they're all entitled to nature connection, because the science now knows that we're more creative, we're happier, we're healthier, we're more vital, we have a bigger heart. Conservation ethic is driven by nature connection. So if that's the case, how are we literally going to get everyone on this beautiful planet nature connected at the same time? Because again, it's no good if two people do it and then come back to work and try to tell their compadres about it, because they'll be pushed back by the social momentum that everyone takes for granted. No. This is what we have to do. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got, this to do and that to do. I'm not saying, we can just let go of all our, the commercial needs of life, all at once. But we do have to make space for the priority of remembering what it means to be human and what it means to be alive.
Thank you, Kenna. And so as I watched that, I was thinking about as the city goes through their relaunch campaign, not just focusing on the economic enterprises that we're bringing people to, but how to invite people into the Laguna and our nature. And then as an inevitable consequence, they'll support the establishments around, but making nature more of that focus. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that today. So now we'll review the action items, which was for the members to promote the Climate Action Framework Survey through the end of the month and last month. And then for just everyone to know that the Sonoma Climate Mobilization is available for working group collaborations on projects. Do we have any comments from the public today regarding items that are not on our agenda? All right. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, a good crisis is not to be wasted. I don't know if I've said it, but it's certainly true. We have sky-high gas prices. We have inflation that we haven't seen in 40 years. We have Monday, I believe, a new report about how urgent action is. So I encourage you guys and the city council to step up and make Sebastopol an active transportation first city, where walking and biking, including e-biking, which we may need for the hills, is the center of how we're getting around. And also how to involve our sister cities in the rest of the world in that activity, because we cannot do it in Sebastopol, we cannot do it in California, because this is not the nature of this crisis, is an atmospheric crisis that doesn't stop at the border. So China can emit and we cannot emit, but that doesn't really matter. We have to all do it. So involve other cities, become an example of small towns doing good things, but also advertise yourself in doing good things. So become an active transportation city and involve other cities in your endeavor. Thanks.
Thank you, Gino. Any other public comment regarding items not on the agenda today? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Do any members of the committee have statements of conflict of interest regarding items on our agenda today? All right, seeing none, we will move to the planning department report.
Thank you, Kenna. Quite a few things to report today. I think the biggest item, I hope the biggest item is that the council at their meeting last Tuesday read the first reading for the fossil fuel station ban. And I want to thank Woody and a number of the CAC folks who showed up. I really appreciate that. And just so you all know, it's not just this little group. We received probably about 20 to 30 comments from the general public, all in support of the action. So it was actually a pretty quick item at council, which is, as Diana can probably test, a little rare these days, and everyone was happy to be unanimously supportive of it. It will be going back to council next Tuesday for the second reading, and then it will go into effect 30 days after that, so middle of May. Let's see, we also had a discussion at the last meeting regarding the planning commission size, and it looks like we've been requested to bring back a revised ordinance to move the size of that commission from 7 to 5 members. So just in terms of the Zero Waste and Climate Action Committee discussing new ways of doing business and how to move committees forward. Wanted to let you guys know you're not alone. You know, things change over time, and that group is also looking at some changes. So that'll be on next Tuesday's agenda too, to move that forward. Other things on next Tuesday's agenda, the Zero Waste merging with the Climate Action Committee is on the agenda, with the recommendations for zero waste for who would move into the CAC, and council would, we're asking that council formally merge those committees and appoint both a youth member and a regular member to the climate action. The youth member would become one of the Climate Action Committee's youth members, since we have 2 seats for that and only 1 at this point. And just one note, Kathy Ottinger right now is our Climate Action Committee Planning Commission liaison. Everett Fernandez, who's also a planning commissioner, is the Zero Waste liaison to that group. We did discuss last night at the planning commission meeting, and we'll bring back to on the next planning commission agenda. It looks like Everett will become the liaison for this group, since Kathy has conflict and needs to leave early a lot of times as well. So Kathy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Other than to say I've really enjoyed being on this committee for the short time that I have, and I really support the work that you're doing, and I'm just so glad that you're doing it, and I'm surprised that every city in the world isn't doing the same thing. So stay in there. I really appreciate the effort that you're taking here.
Thanks, Kathy. A couple of other items of interest to this group. For next Tuesday, we will be looking at standard condition of approval for planning projects. You know, that includes things like the green design, but it also includes a lot of other things, so that we can make sure we get frontage improvements like sidewalks improvements and things like that that help us a walkable community. The engineering department will be presenting the local road safety plan. Myself, the police chief, and engineering manager Tony Bertolero have been working on that with SCTA. And then lastly, the council will be discussing whether to transition from online only to, there's actually 3 options being presented. And I do want to get feedback from this committee, if I may, for that, of whether to go to a hybrid meeting where there's both in-person and Zoom, or in-person only. The 2 options for hybrid that are available to the council, one is to have a hybrid where committee members and presenters and whatnot would be able to present, have the option of whether they wanted to come in person or remote. And the other would require everyone except for the public to be present in person. So those are kind of the 4 options: continue fully remote, go fully in person, or there's 2 hybrids. And it would be helpful to me, we discussed this at the planning commission last night, but it would be helpful for me to understand what this committee might be looking at, and know that this would probably happen in a couple of months, especially with this group, where we need to figure out logistics in terms of the spacing being able to have social distancing on an indoor venue.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What facilities does the city have access to that would enable a hybrid meeting?
Well, that's one of the discussion points. The city uses the youth annex large meeting space for planning commission and city council meetings, which are at night. They're a little, that room isn't normally available during the daytime. They're having yoga and Zumba and a lot of other activities in there. When I talked to them, it sounded like their side room may be available, which is probably a good size for this group. Our city hall conference room is not large enough, and I included that in the report, that we'd have to be at a round table and there's no way to get a camera and really do any type of thing there for that. And then obviously it depends upon how the council moves forward. If some members are still remote and the others are not, what the kind of general capacity would be. But we'd pretty much be looking at either the youth annex or something like the art center in one of their larger rooms, and making sure that they had the capacity, the actual technology to do whatever was being proposed. And Kathy, you can get us started off if you want to, and then Sonali, I see.
Yeah, well, my first thought was the question, is there any thought about, and I think one of the things that I really appreciate about staying home and not using gasoline in my car and not taking the extra time from our days to go to a meeting site, which has to be heated and prepared and needs staff help. My question is has there been any discussion about making computers available for people so that we can still get our documents at that location online and still have them available to us without having to bring a laptop of our own to the meeting?
There has been some, it's kind of been left up to each department to do their own, which means I have to figure it out for 5 committees or 4 committees. But I would imagine that I don't have it in my proposed budget yet, but something like a tablet or something at least, so that people, because I think we've all gotten very used to being able to see things up close. And I do know from former in-person presentations that where I presented with a laptop in the youth annex, that the screen is very, very washed out and difficult to see. And Kathy, I know you know this because as a planning commissioner, we're in person. So I do recognize that that's there are a lot of things that are easier to see on on an individual screen. And so I think that, and needing earbuds if you're in person for the committee members. I know the city does know that we need to purchase those so that the sound works with the technicians. So yes, there would be costs associated with that. And I'm thinking something like a tablet would probably work for most of my committees. So, and that would probably be just a tablet that's there, cleaned afterwards and used for the next committee. So. Kenna, do you want me to moderate this, or I think Sonali was next?
I'm just going to let you moderate, but yes.
Okay, cool. I think Sonali is next, and then you, Kenna.
Thank you. Although I would not be able to make most of the meetings, I appreciate the idea of having a hybrid option for greater group cohesion and bonding, and agree simultaneously with what Kathy Ottinger shared. And wonder if we were doing it at the youth annex, if during good weather we could do, and everybody was bringing their own tablet and had earbuds, if we could do it outside and invite that element into our meeting to inform us.
That's interesting. I'm not sure how that would work with the streaming and the technology of being able to have other folks. But it's an interesting idea, actually.
I think if it's
obviously not at all times of the year when it's raining or something,
with our umbrellas and our laptop. If it is at the community center, I believe we have Wi-Fi access outside, but I don't quite, because I think, yeah, at some of the events, that's been my experience, but yeah.
I know that Jerry's not here, but I know that he has been a huge proponent of returning to in-person meetings, but I think his reason for doing so is that people can talk more simultaneously, which would not work in a hybrid format. So, but I know he's been really wanting that to happen. I, on the other hand, am a little bit, I miss in-person meetings a lot, but I do think that as the Climate Action Committee, the symbolism of us being willing to telecommute in and not drive our cars is powerful. So I wouldn't want to create a situation where people were forced to drive cars and take the extra time.
Thank you. Woody, and then Debbie.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I sort of thinking of this in terms of best practices and like sort of public participation. And so for that, my inclination would be to have something that leaves as many options open for people as possible. So I would say I would be opposed to going back to just in-person meetings, and I'd be more inclined toward hybrid with option for everyone, including the council or planning commission or what have you. And then I dropped in the chat this fourth option thought, which was how about have it Zoom most of the time, but like just so people once in a while, once, twice, 3 times a year have in-person gatherings. Just a thought.
Interesting, like, yeah, once a quarter you get together as an in-person meeting. It's and I think our committees, I don't know, and obviously we have a council member here listening, so, but I don't know where council will go, but I would think our committees may actually have a little bit more flexibility than something like a council or planning commission in that, doing something like that potentially. Although I know with our planning commission last night, a lot of folks, I think the majority, sort of wanted to make sure we had the virtual option for commission attendees available. And then, yeah, the idea of doing a tour or like a park tour, because there are parks commission or things like that throughout the year for special events to get together. So that's an interesting idea, Woody. Debbie, I think you were next.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my points were raised. I do think as a climate action committee, it really doesn't make sense to take all these cars and to come into town and the resources of paper. And, so I do feel, that. I also think that you get more public attendance if you have a virtual, virtual meeting, more people can attend it. And, I really feel that, in light of the pandemic, which is why we're here, and somebody brought this up last night very meaningfully, that the pandemic, isn't over, and that, she doesn't leave her house and wears an N95 mask all the time. And so I think it's a little too soon for me to expect people to push beyond their own comfort zone. That one thing I've seen is separation through this whole thing. And I think we need to just be united with whatever anybody's comfort zone is, whether it's not wearing a mask, coming in, whatever. And by having it only in person, I think it would really create that, that differentiation between people who have more of a comfort than other people.
Thank you. Lisa, Zeno, and then Alex.
Yeah, I was actually going to say just what Woody said too. It would be nice to meet occasionally in person, and maybe it's 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. But I'm basically flexible on this issue. That's it.
Thanks. Dino, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, yeah. I wonder whether there's legal requirements to meet in person, because my understanding is that the allowing not to meet in person is dependent on the emergency declaration. So by the time that is lifted, I wonder what the legal situation is. And I put a link and a little title of the link in the chat.
Thanks, Eno. Alex?
Yeah, I just wanted to say for me, I definitely voice a lot of the hybrid models. I think it'd be nice to come in when it's possible, or if like we do a quarterly meeting. I think it's super convenient to be remote, because I mean, I would have if it was all in person, I probably would have missed at least half the meeting. So I just think it does really, and obviously just with travel, it makes it really nice, because if you have a meeting in San Francisco, on Wednesday morning, you have to, you have to just plan to drive all the way back. It's like, it just, for me, I think it makes it more climate friendly. I really do think it does. And it makes it easier for our busy schedules to still attend the meeting and have flexibility. So thank you.
And there's a couple of comments in the chat from Jess about options, which is great. And yeah, the social gatherings, like the one that Dina hosted. So, all right. Kenna, and I know you're the moderator. I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to thank you all for your input on this.
I do have one more quick question, which is, like, I think I tend to assume that being online increases accessibility, which it definitely does for some people, but does being all online decrease accessibility for anyone? Like, has the city, during the time that the meetings have been online, received any word from members of the public who find the meetings less accessible if they are all online?
Diana, you might have some input on this as well, but I think what we've found with the Planning Commission, where we tend to have, people coming out about projects, is I think we've kind of felt like we were getting a lot more participation, especially from, I noticed especially people who have kids, younger kids, and they're working and they're, they get home, but they've got kids, and their kid is not going to sit through a 3-hour meeting or a 4-hour meeting, but until you get to that item, but if you get, if they can keep their kid entertained at home, that's really helpful for them. Kathy and Diana, as those other liaisons, do you have thoughts?
Kathy, you have anything you want to comment here?
Yes, I just think it is important, and I felt like we do get more public attending meetings. Not that we've had a lot of hot button issues, but when we do, it's much easier to accommodate that large group and to hear all their comments, and you don't have the getting up and down to the podium. They can read their notes on their computers. I just think it was a very effective way for the public to comment, whether they have children or whether they're elderly or whether it's raining out or whether they have a better chair to sit in, whatever it is. I think it's a great way for people to have public comment. I just see more and more businesses doing business this way. More people are working this way. We're getting better at doing it. And I think a hybrid method, if we're required to have some people in person at a location, I think, we could work with that, but I would hope that we would find ways to be more energy efficient and more conscious of our environment by using techniques like this to live in the future.
I have a slightly different perspective on it. There are definitely people who used to come to in-person city council meetings who are not tech friendly and who are not particularly entranced with Zoom, who are no longer participating. So we are losing that group of people. And I know that because of having attended city council meetings, which were held at the community center. Those people are not there. So there is a demographic that we are losing by not having an in-person option. There is also a demographic that we have gained with Zoom. And so that, I think, speaks to the hybrid model. But I think we're misleading ourselves if we think that Zoom has only resulted in inclusion. In fact, it has resulted in exclusion of certain people. The other comment I would offer is that the quality of the participation is different. And I've had a number of people make that observation to me, that they feel that there is more comment, but that some of the comment is different because there's a sense of anonymity with Zoom. And that can encourage sharing. It also, it can decrease civility and that sense of being face-to-face with someone with whom you develop that sense of respect because you're sitting there face-to-face with them. So I would encourage hybrid. I think that's an excellent idea. We don't want to lose the advantage that we've gotten through the pandemic in terms of inclusion, but we don't want to stick only with this Zoom environment. Hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Diana. And I think this committee is probably fortunate, other than the Zoom bombing. We haven't had any that sort of very, very controversial topics that I know the council handles.
Yeah, no,
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and
Although
on balance,
I have seen in-person commenters be just as rude, I'll just say.
On balance, I think it's a good thing, but I think going back to an in-person context is also very helpful, especially in this community. I mean, we hear comments from Sonali that that really resonate in that way for me. Thanks.
All right. Do you have enough feedback, Carrie?
And that's excellent. Thank you very much. Yes.
Anything else in your planning department report?
I think that's it. Oh, a couple other things. We did receive the Woodmark travel consultation, the large project on Bodega. That concluded a couple weeks ago, and we did receive their applications. So we are processing that. And we, for those of you, I think I talked about the Huntley Square 10-unit mini townhome project that was approved by council. That has to go through design review for final approval of the design, not the use permit or anything or zoning. And we have received that as well, same day actually. So a couple big projects in, and that'll be scheduled for the design review board in shortly. And I think that is it, unless anyone has questions about anything else going on in the city.
No, that's good. Diana, do you have anything to report from council that Carrie did not cover in her report?
Yeah, just a few kind of fun things. Yeah, the gas station ban was very well received. So that was wonderful. The RV Village, which is Horizon Shine, is actually using some solar. Thought you'd be interested in hearing that, which is kind of cool. And electricity, I think, is good to go. So hopefully those generators will be turned off. From a climate action perspective, wouldn't that be nice? There's some interest from our police chief. I'm on the budget committee, and in that budget committee discussion, the police chief expressed interest in the possibility of incorporating electric vehicles into his group of patrol vehicles, and he referenced a program used by Fremont Police. So I wanted to put that out there. I'm sure he'll be looking into it, but I thought maybe this committee could leap into that issue and provide him perhaps some useful research information to consider. So there's that. Someone raised their hand. Jess?
Hi, yeah. I was just kind of thinking like, yeah, the electric vehicles are great, but can we deal with the lawn outside the police station first to save them money before they spend more? Just a thought.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, is it Yesenia or Jasenia?
It's Jasenia.
Okay, thank you. I have a good friend who pronounces it Yesenia, so I'm easily confused. Yes, I will tell you that the city water use is really well contained. But I'll look into that again just to make sure. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, the use of water for that lawn, Jasenia?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. But let's not lose track of that electric vehicle concept. You guys get some information to our police chief. The other thing, that I wanted to report was that at the SCTA, at Sonoma County Transportation Agency and RCPA, Regional Climate Protection Agency meeting, and I think others in this room may have been at that meeting recently, there was a comment from the public during that meeting, which I think might be important for this Climate Action Committee to consider. And the comment was that there's a push to encourage residents to convert to electric, their stovetops, water heaters, all of that, but that it can be really hard for residents to navigate how to get that done, that they tend to need some mentoring, some advice, some direction. So I don't have a solution for that, but I look at you guys and you might have some ideas that could help our residents in that direction. And I think that's really the only pieces that I wanted to share, other than, boy, everyone's telling me how much they love the compost distribution. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
All right, Sonali?
Is it the police chief that we would talk to about the electric bikes or electric vehicles?
Electric vehicles, yes. If you would like to send the police chief any information. Did I see, Carrie, you say something about that in the chat? No. Yeah, so any information you can, it's kKilgore@cityofsebastopol.org. And I will put that in the chat.
Who can somebody remind me who our transportation subcommittee is?
Wave your hands, Transportation Subcommittee.
So that's me and Alex, and Zeno participates on a regular basis. And yeah, we can provide gobs of information for them. And Zeno and I are both regular attendees at the North Bay Electric Auto Association, and we've got lots of resources to provide.
So would it have more weight if we took that to the city council to put their endorsement on and then sent it to the police chief?
My suggestion would be that you submit information directly, that the Transportation Committee submit information directly to Chief Kilgore. He is in the midst of meeting with the Budget Committee, and he has proposed purchase of a couple of vehicles. So now is the time. Now, I will tell you that the big barrier here, Woody, you guys, I mean, you understand where I'm going with this, is infrastructure. So to the extent you have electric vehicles, it's not just the cost of the electric vehicle, it's that there would need to be infrastructure changes in order to provide support for those vehicles. But yeah, if the transportation, so the information should go directly to the police chief. Police chief is in conversations with Nisa and me on the Budget Committee about his request for funding for these vehicles.
Okay, and then lastly, just reminding us that the Budget Committee's meeting on the 18th, right? So we want to send that to him before then?
Sure, the sooner the better, but yes, before the 18th would be great. And he's just gathering information. I'm just thinking if you can feed him some information that would be useful in terms of cost and that kind of thing, that would be great. Do you want me? I see, Kenna, I see that Lisa has her hand up.
Yeah, I would like to move this discussion forward. So I think you've provided enough information for the Transportation Working Group to move forward. Lisa, did you want to say something?
Oh, just really quick. They're almost always open. Those chargers right across the street from the police station are very seldom used. And I don't know if that's a city-owned lot that might be able to be for police use only or something like that. I mean, that would be a super cheap way to give them electric access besides setting up something on right across the street outside the station. Just an idea.
Alex, were you raising your hand?
No, but I'll make a comment. Yeah, I mean, if anybody has ideas, they can send them to Woody and I, and we can funnel them out to the police chief before the 18th, on or before the 18th.
Perfect.
And that's exciting. Thank you.
All right, Debbie?
I would just add really quickly that the Planning Commission has a proposed potential 2 more electric vehicle stations going in with a new Starbucks at the by over in the Longs, where the old CVS in that area is going to be. So
Yeah, it's where the Burger King is currently. And that did actually get approved last night at the design review board with the requirement to have the EVs. We did check with them and they're able to do that. So we went ahead and required it, along with additional bicycle parking.
All right, great. All right, so moving on, our regular agenda. We have the energy code discussion that now we've had these options. I don't know if you guys all have your blue, I don't know how to make this show up in the background, but the blue sheet with all the options. And we've had some discussion on this. And so I don't know if there's a lot more to discussion to be had, or if, you know, kind of where we are in moving this along. I don't really have a sense of whether there's an obvious suggestion for the group. So Jerry wanted me to let everyone know that he feels that we should adopt, you probably already know this, he feels we should adopt Cal Green Tier 1. And then restructure the code to create two new chapters in Title 15 with the green building and the energy, and then clean up the other sections to move everything that's related into those 2 sections. So I wanted to give Carrie an opportunity to provide any education you feel like the committee hasn't received about staff time that would be required by the different options, or if you'd rather wait until a motion is made and then weigh in at that point to say, like, this is what this would mean. Go ahead.
I think I've already, and I think Steve Brown actually presented pretty well as the acting building official, how things would impact his and what would be easiest. And I think that I agree with his assessment, as well as how what Steve and Jerry had presented at the last presentation.
And Steve, do you have anything to kind of weigh in at this point?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. Oh, maybe you can enable that.
Okay, you should be good to go, Steve.
Okay. Oh. Of course, I'm struggling here with the share, trying to get to my links. Okay, can you see my screen?
No.
You see it? Oh, you don't. Well, I think I am just going to pop a link in to the chat, and that will be to a list of how the various cities that have adopted either all electric reach or gas moratoriums, which cities have adopted it. And it's kind of interesting information. Copy that in. Hold on just a second. So if people have a chance to pull up that link, that first column you'll see is all the cities that have adopted the gas moratorium. And it's increasing that is quite a bit of the cities that are recently adopted have gone that direction for a natural gas moratorium. And we talked briefly about that in the last time we discussed this issue. And there's maybe legal challenges down the road. They have been cleared away in the city of Berkeley. They did win a lawsuit with the California Restaurant Association. And it is simpler to go down that route of adopting a gas moratorium. But the question would be, does our small city have the capacity and resources to support that if there was a challenge? And then also, do we have the capacity to even draft that? While we don't have to have the California Energy Commission approve a gas moratorium, unlike the all electric reach codes, there's definitely some staff time that would be required to go down that road. It's an interesting approach. It's certainly simpler in some ways because you don't have to get the California Energy Commission approval every 3 years if we go that route. And there are various exceptions that cities have adopted. Some say restaurants are exempt from it. Most of them say that they aren't exempt. And looking at Petaluma's exemption rules, they say that if you're going to try to get an exemption to their gas moratorium, then you have to satisfy that the intended uses were not, if the only way they could supply the intended uses was with natural gas. And then the building department official has to determine that it's infeasible to go all electric. And the cost, any additional cost for going all electric can't be one of the determinations for an exemption. So that kind of gives you a flavor of how they kind of made it. Instead of specifying specific exemptions, they've left it up to their building department official to determine it. And then applicants would have to try to prove their case.
Yes, Woody?
Thanks. Yeah, Steve, I just have a clarifying question. My understanding had been that these municipalities had all adopted permanent bans, not moratoria. I mean, are these temporary?
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought they were permanent bans too. The Building Decarbonization Coalition has it listed as a moratorium, but I was a little confused with that myself. But it doesn't have to come up for renewal like an all electric reach would.
Yeah, I mean, they're permanent bans and not moratoria.
Right.
Anyway, okay.
Lisa?
Yeah, I would just kind of second what Jerry is recommending. I think that the cost to the city could be significant for carrying out a more than that. And I'm not sure it's the best bang for the buck in terms of the climate because of the changes that are coming into Title 24 anyway, and the amount of new construction that we have that's already kind of saying it's going to be all electric. So it could be a fairly large expense for the city. And then if there's a legal challenge, we may not have the resources to defend it. And so all that work that the city did and the money spent would just kind of go to waste almost. And I think that we could spend our city dollars doing things that are more effective for the climate. That's my view.
Does anyone want to speak to, and I'm kind of looking at Woody, but anyone, to the issue of like incomprehensibility of these different options, of kind of what is the public response? Like how is the public understand these different things? Does one of them do a better job of helping the public understand the purpose and the upshot of what we're trying to do. Like if you say to me in the newspaper, we're adopting tier 1 of Cal Green, my eyes cross a little bit. Where if you say we're banning natural gas, that's really clear. But I don't know if, how much that would weigh into our decision making, whether we're trying to clean up the code or whether we're trying to educate the public or whether we're trying to do both.
I mean, I'll just chime in since you mentioned my name that no, I have trouble with this too. This is not an issue area that I've been able to dig into very deeply, unfortunately. So I can't really answer that question around here, to try to sort of concisely say, what is it that this city did? No, I don't have that, not at my fingertips.
All right, Elisa, go ahead.
Just to follow up on other ways that the city could spend those dollars, that comment that was raised about people wanting to switch over to electric but needing some guidance, that's a really great, I think, way to spend money, is to provide more resources for the public to make those transitions.
All right, Diana?
Yeah, I have great respect for this committee and especially for the subgroups, working groups that dive deep into these topics. So just from my perspective, we've got a recommendation from the group that looked at it most closely, and my instinct, especially listening to Lisa with her comments, is to go with their recommendation. Just makes sense to me. And I just tend to defer to that more informed source. Thanks.
It is a lot of work that this group has done to try to sort through this stuff. So I'm open to entertaining motions if there is a motion to be made. Don't all jump at once. Oh, am I supposed to ask for the public comment before I hear the motions?
Yes, before motions. Yeah.
So before we hear motions, do we have, oh, go ahead, Alex, and then, or were you going to make a motion?
Yeah.
Let me just ask if there any further public comment on this issue. All right, go ahead, Alex.
So I'm not totally clear what we're making the motion on, but I just want to support the group. I think we're making a motion on supporting Lisa and Steve's proposal, but I just want to clarify exactly what that wording would be in the motion before I do that.
Gary?
Good.
Can you phrase a motion for us, Carrie?
So you're going to be, the motion would be to recommend council consider adoption of, and then the options. Yeah.
The Cal Green Tier 1 plan, right?
Thank you. I didn't want to make the motion for him what he was going to say. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going to make a motion to bring to City Council the adoption of Cal Green Tier 1.
Do we have a second for that motion? All right, I see Lisa.
It's more involved than that. I hate to say it.
Yes, tell us more, Steve.
Well, if you look at Jerry's recommendations, it's not just the Cal Green Tier 1. Our code is not in very good shape. Stuff is all over the place. Our solar ordinances are not in compliance with the state energy code because they never went through the REACH process for code approval from the California Energy Commission. So it's more than Cal Green Tier 1. It's also a review of our existing municipal code, and it need be either removing it because we're not in compliance and we just end up with the Title 24 energy standards when it comes to solar and residential and commercial. And it's consolidating our code and cleaning it up. So I know that's a very difficult thing to make a motion on than just Cal Green Tier 1.
Yeah.
I propose, if this works, the motion as stated, and to include any needed review and revision of existing Sebastopol city codes. Would that work, Carrie?
So member Rich has proposed an amendment to the motion. And so that would need the person who made the motion, who was Alex, to accept that, and the person who seconded to also accept that. Okay, and Lisa, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Diana, can you say that again so I can write it down, please?
Sure. To add, I think, so capturing, I think what you said, Alex, was that you moved that the Climate Action Committee recommend to the City Council that the City of Sebastopol adopt the Cal Green Tier 1 proposal, and including any needed review and revision of existing Sebastopol city codes.
And I would say Sebastopol municipal codes related to buildings.
Sebastopol
Obviously, we've got stuff all over the code that needs to be fixed.
Okay, including any needed review and revision of existing Sebastopol municipal codes relating to
building regulations. Yeah.
Building regulations. This is why I never make motions at the city council meetings. I never know what they should say. Do you want me to try to repeat that, Kenna, guys, or did you get that?
I think I got it. Woody, was there something you were wanting to say? Did he leave?
Yeah, there was, which was what Steve said in terms of Jerry's proposal. It's unfortunate that Jerry's not here to be able to sort of articulate things, but it didn't sound like what you were describing, Steve, is something that's on that blue sheet, and that's all I have. Maybe I missed something. Was it a previous meeting where we received something that sort of walked us through a little bit more what you were just describing there verbally?
It's a combination of two things on this. So one is adopt Cal Green Tier and one is the code cleanup. So it's pairing those two things together, like the third and fourth lines down, options down. Does that make sense?
I have to say I don't think that's necessarily on code cleanup, Kenna. It says consolidate energy related building code. That was on his blue sheet. I don't think that's what we're talking about in this motion. I think we're talking about making any needed revisions in our existing municipal code that might be required to implement the adopt Cal Green Tier 1 proposal.
So Jerry's actual recommendation was that we restructure the code to create two new chapters in Title 15 with a green building code and an energy code, and then we clean up the other sections to move things, any applicable items to these new sections.
That's huge. That's a Carrie question.
Yeah. So I can comment that would be an incredible amount of staff or consultant time to do that. I think, there certainly are ways that it can be restructured, though, that, where the language isn't changing, but the numbering and the organization is. And I think that's, I don't want to speak for the building department, but I'm just looking at the building, and I can, hold on, I can share my screen quick just so you can kind of see what the building code is. So it does have things that are just, normal building code kind of things. And then it does have things that are, is flood damage a green building thing because it's about hazards with getting worse with climate change, or is that a building efficiency? This one is certainly building efficiency. Wood burning appliances, which would that go into and whatnot. So I don't know if it, I think cleanup and removing things that are no longer needed, and potentially, I guess I don't want to put Steve Brown in a place where he's being asked to do something that he's not here to speak about. But I think you could recommend code cleanups necessary to better clarify green building requirements and leave it up to the building department and through other folks who might be involved to determine whether that's, put it all at the first section of chapter 15 or break it into two, or what they have time and capacity and budget to do.
All right, I feel like Kathy has been waiting for a while to speak.
Yeah, but I keep changing my mind because I'm not sure whether I would want to vote for this without knowing what what Jerry had in mind completely, and without looking at the cost of staff time to do that cleanup, or whether that cleanup is necessary. So I'm a little bit in a quandary whether to jump in on this now or to think that we could maybe do it better, having it really in writing and understanding what kind of cleanup we need. I know we need to clean up the codes regularly, and maybe we just need to do it, but I almost wonder whether it wouldn't be better to reach a little more deeply and spend that time actually doing something a little bit more significant with that money than just cleaning up our code. And I'm also wondering why there isn't federal or state money to help us do this. If you're going to spend money to change the world and to get off of gas, we need to put money into that. And joining the other cities and forcing this, could make a better stand, even though we don't have as many homes to be built. It's still part of standing up with the other people who do have more homes to be built. So I'm torn a bit.
Thank you.
These two issues.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just wondering if I can let Steve go first, because I think he's might be answering some of the stuff. Can I go after Steve?
Sure.
Well, really, I just want to bring up the issue about our solar ordinances. And we should have been probably more explicit in our documentation of what's going on with them and how they're not complying with the current law. And how we go from here maybe requires a little more discussion and digging on, do we end up having to rescind our solar ordinance and just adopt the state's current ordinance as it is? The state's ordinance does include benefits for storage. You don't have to install quite as much solar if you have battery storage. And then the commercial requirements are coming into kick with the new code for both solar and storage. So I'm concerned that we have code that's not legally enforceable now. And part of the cleanup needs to be a review of that code.
Can I ask, if we adopted tier 1, would that override the non-enforceable parts of our code and kind of make that a moot point?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Lisa, did you still have something else?
Well, yeah, I think what Jerry was talking about with cleaning things up and organizing the energy codes so things are more easy to find. I think that Stephen and Jerry did kind of look at ways to do that weren't very complicated, just moving things around, not necessarily rewriting things. But I agree that it might be good to wait with a vote till Jerry's back. And yeah, no big rush on this as far as I'm concerned.
Alex? You're muted, or your mic's not on or something.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what Lisa said. I don't know if it would make sense to have Steve Brown at the next meeting if he is available. There might be some comments he has. I don't exactly know. My other comment was, if we can make the motion, I agree we don't have to make it this week, and that's fine. I think it is good to have Jerry here to support in explaining this. I think it also could be, the motion could be around the tier 1 and also getting our code to compliance. I think that to me seems like the most important part. Whatever that means, if we do feel like we're out of compliance, we can at least recommend to our city council to get back within compliance, whatever that means.
That's true, Alex. You could basically handle them as two separate motions. I imagine they would both be brought to council at the same time. Just
Yep.
so for council's understanding of what's being recommended. So, but it's up to the committee how you want to handle that. If you want to, make the motion and on the tier 1 now, or Alex, you can withdraw your entire motion. That's either way.
Carrie, to clarify, the motion as currently stands with both one and the language of any needed review, revision of existing Sebastopol municipal codes related to building is that as it currently, is on the table, is
Correct. That is the motion as amended. So that is,
Yeah.
if you did the vote right now without any amendments, that would be the vote.
Right. So, but is it as written or as it's on the table at the current time, is that as written an overwhelming request for staff time in terms of that amount of review revision?
I think in the way you described it, where it's a comprehensive split the building title into 2 chapters. Yes, I would certainly not want to include that if that's the intent without Steve being at the meeting and Jerry both. And I will give Steve a heads up and ask him to attend the next meeting.
Okay. So, Alex, do you want to withdraw your motion? Do you want to let your original motion, do you want to, I'm not sure what the process is, have we officially amended the motion? And now Alex, if he
I'd like to,
go back to just tier 1, does he need to do something else?
yeah, I'd like to withdraw my motion. I'd like to wait for Jerry and at least minimum Jerry, if we can get Steve on here next meeting, that would be great. I think there's still some questions unanswered.
Okay. Do we want to wait until next meeting? And I just trying to read faces here, or just, raise your hands. Do we want to wait for next meeting for the whole thing or just for the cleanup part? So for the whole thing, wave at me if you want to wait for the next meeting. Okay, that's enough. We'll talk more at the next meeting, but I think we're starting to understand a little bit better what all the different parts of this are, hopefully. So thank you all. And thank you, especially Steve, for being here to help us understand all that, and everyone for the good discussion. All right, so we will move on to our, we'll table that for next time, and we will move on to a discussion of micro mobility in the city of Sebastopol. And that is a potential action item, so we can hear motions, etc. We've had discussion. First, Alex, your hand is still up, so I'm gonna, okay. See if anyone has any further questions for the transportation group about the micro mobility. And I personally would love to hear from someone on transportation with an opinion of, what is the transportation working group advising the whole CAC about this issue? Not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot. Go ahead, Alex.
I can speak a little bit, and then Woody, I don't know if you had a game plan, but you want to go first, Woody, and I can follow you? Does that work for you?
I mean, sure, if you'd like me to, I can say, I was prepared to say a few things, and, we don't have anything in writing to share. And we, if we don't take an action today, the Transportation Committee can put together something in writing that, that can go to the City Council. I mean, I think this is another one where there are a lot of questions, and I think that, I don't think this is something that we can recommend to the City Council that will go to the City Council without a lot of unresolved concerns and questions and things. So it's that kind of issue. I think the decision today, and we heard from the Bird folks a few meetings ago, second time in this full committee and then previously in the Transportation Committee. They've answered some of our questions, some of them maybe not as fully as we'd like. And so I think the decision today is to continue. Do we continue looking at it in this committee, in the Transportation Committee, and try to resolve some of the concerns at our level, or do we sort of punt it forward to the City Council for their, review and a presentation from Byrd or others? I mean, this is the kind of thing, and it speaks to what Zaino was talking earlier in his comments about, how do we advance these means of transportation other than cars? And I think I had an initial presumption that this would do that. I'm not so clear on that now. Trying to really imagine how these would reduce, vehicle miles traveled in the city of Sebastopol. Not 100% clear on that. So those are the two things. It's either do we not really take an action today and continue to discuss among ourselves, or do we put something together, that can be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation? And I will say one last thing, which is was shared around that Windsor recently decided, even with lots of questions, to do a pilot. And a pilot is what would make sense, I think, for the city, if they're going to do anything on it, to do a pilot program that has a built-in, end time where it's evaluated whether or not to keep it on. And that's the kind of thing I think we would recommend to the City Council to look at, debate whether or not to initiate a pilot project. That's it.
Alex?
Cool. I just wanted to share my perspective on this. I've been an early adopter of micromobility, primarily in San Francisco, as early as about 2017, I believe, maybe a little earlier, when these scooters first came out. And I'm a big proponent. Obviously, we're not in San Francisco and Sebastopol, but I still do think there's an element of micromobility that can be for tourism or transportation, to add an activity. I also do believe that this is an opportunity for us to provide the community with a way to test out different types of micromobility. They may not ride the scooter from here to Santa Rosa, or whatever the situation is. They may not go very far, but what they're going to do is they're going to discover the technology. And I have seen a lot more people buying scooters, and I think that's partly because they've been able to ride them with their phone, and they sign up in less than 5 minutes and they jump on one. So I think that's the same thing with e-bikes. I do think that's an opportunity, and I think it would be worth a pilot program to get some of those vehicles to Sebastopol for our community to test out. And I'd like to support a motion today.
I would like to hear from Lisa and Dina. And actually, I would prefer that I prefer that the Transportation Working Group actually take this back, that we table it to a later date, and Transportation take this back and come up with some kind of justification for, like kind of what you're saying, Alex. And maybe if you guys are all like, no, we really want this, why we would not wait until we see how this plays out in other Sonoma County places, and what is the climate impact of how do we see this really playing out in our towns once we don't have the kind of public transit nodes that would reduce car trips with micromobility. I'm not really seeing it yet, but go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I think, Alex, you made some really good points. That Windsor pilot study, they're not going to be allowed on the roads, just on the trails and bike lanes, which, I think is a reflection of, I do have some concerns about these scooters, little concerns about where they'd be parked and that sort of thing, but kind of big concerns about parking. Not parking, safety. And I just hope it's okay if I just spend a little time talking about that. They have very small wheels and they can go 25 to 30 miles per hour. And a lot of the people who are riding them are not very experienced. And I heard a story from somebody a few weeks back that really kind of got to me. This young woman was with some friends, and they decided to rent some scooters, and she was looking back to kind of yell something to her friend behind her, didn't see the irregular pavement, the little hole in it. Her wheel went in the pavement. She went flying forward, hit her jaw, and she didn't go to the hospital right away. She was pretty banged up. By the time she got to the hospital, she basically had a brain aneurysm. Part of her jaw had gone into her brain, and she's permanently disabled. And she told her mom, I would do anything to go back and to not have decided to get on that scooter. You know, it was devastating. And so there's the last study that was the big study, the US Consumer Product Safety Commission. So the e-scooter accidents in 2020, which was the last time it was completed, just in that year, there were 25,400 accidents. And in a 2019 study, they found that 40.2% of riders suffered from a head injury. And only 4.4% of riders are wearing helmets in that study. So there's people getting seriously hurt out there. I would love to see e-bikes, which are so much safer, you know, big wheels, people can sit down, they can carry things. I think they're just so much safer and more practical. I'd love to see those be available for rent, but I have serious concerns about the scooters. Thanks.
Dina?
So my question is, if we're trying to get less cars through town, do we have one of those devices or something more modern that counts cars? So if you were to have e-bikes or scooters for a pilot program, you could demonstrate some data about how many cars or how many people went by the device counting them. Is that such a thing? Or I remember when I was a kid, there was sometimes things out in the street to count traffic.
Yeah, so those are generally not a permanent installation. What they are, they're, you know, they used to be like the little strips and things like that. And I think that's still what we use, where you put those out and you count cars over a specific period of time to do a traffic count. And I don't think, I mean, it would be Caltrans, I guess, which might have more, since they operate most of the signals in town along 116 and 12, that would, I don't know if they have that capability of counting cars or not. I do know our traffic counts that we're using right now are pre-pandemic. And it's, you know, I'm not sure how you would count that, but I mean, happy to talk with the engineering department about how that's done.
There's at this point in history, there's too many confounding factors for trying to count trips because of return to offices and all the demographic shifts that are happening. So I don't think we would be able to gather meaningful data that way. I do know that the Bird people said they do surveys of their ridership, which is where we could ask them what their capabilities would be to survey the ridership in this locality and see if, people are saying, I would have walked or I would have driven. Diana?
Are we talking e-bikes or e-scooters or both?
You know what? I think we're gonna take. I think we can send this back to transportation.
Good. Yeah, I would encourage you to do exactly that. I have a very bad experience with an e-bike where I had insufficient preparation. So I have concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think there's clearly transportation working group, you have public health and public safety concerns being brought forward by committee members, and a lack of clarity about what it would actually look like, what the benefits would be, what the specific climate benefits would be. And did you have a question for the group, Woody?
No, just a quick answer for Councilmember Rich, which is that Bird did say that they were going to start with scooters and probably, get to the bikes later for Sebastopol. That's what they'd said previously. And I totally get, and I've experienced myself some of these issues. I was in Sacramento at the end of March, and some young people came up really quickly, and I kind of had to sort of dodge on the sidewalk going really quickly. Anyway, so yeah, there are issues. So I'm happy to take it back to the Transportation Committee and continue discussing it. We'd be happy to receive any further information. And thank you, Zeno. I saw you put the Santa Rosa report in the chat. Folks should look at that. I looked at it a while back, and yeah, there are a lot of issues. So we'll look at it. Thank you.
Dina, was there something you needed to say to the whole group today, or can you address your concern to transportation out of the meeting?
I don't need to say anything else about that.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to move us forward here.
Yeah, and just to say really quick, I will also take it on, or between Alex and myself, we'll take it on to let the Bird folks know that we're not moving with a recommendation to the City Council.
Great, thank you. So we're going to be tabling the discussion of the project pipeline, but hopefully now agenda item C. So hopefully now you guys all have that information, can sit with it a little bit and think about whether any comments or feedback that you have around that issue. We will take that up next meeting, where we're going to be kind of doing a review of our internal processes. Phoebe, do you want to give us just a quick update on the framework progress?
Sure, I'll just give a very brief one. The survey, as Kenna said, closed at the end of March. So I'm now really focusing on drafting the framework and hope to have a draft by the end of this month. And I'm not sure when it'll be coming to this committee, but it's in progress. So that's my update.
Great, thank you so much. Working group reports there. I did have a question from the outreach committee about social media, but we will not have time obviously to talk about that today. But was there a newsletter issue that needed to be spoken to the whole group this meeting? No. Okay, nothing urgent. Any working groups have anything urgent? I know before our next meeting, we have the next compost event.
Yeah, can I say something about the newsletter and the
yes. Yeah.
So that one of the issues with the newsletter is who would be writing the news. So just something to think about. Would each working group have something that they would want reported, meaning they would need to write it up to go in a climate newsletter? Is that something they'd like to partake in, to share information, or not? They would just like it to appear magically, or would they partake in sharing what they're working on? Just something to think about. And compost, you have in all the meeting attachments the flyer for April 24th, and you have just a write-up about more information if you want to share with anybody. Because there are more compost events going on in the county, we're really trying to say, if you don't live in Sebastopol or west towards Occidental, where there isn't a compost giveaway, then please check the Zero Waste Sonoma calendar and look up compost in your area. If you know anybody that lives outside of Sebastopol that wants our compost, suggest they look at that link, and I put the link in the chat. And think about if you want to come help us at the event on the 24th for some of the time, or part of the time, or all of the time, or whatever. We could use extra help, like we were lucky to have in the March event.
Great, thank you so much. Any other working groups have something that we need to review today? Nope. Okay. Do we have any legislative, Woody, I put this kind of on as a standing item, legislative updates. Is there anything that we need to be paying attention to time-wise that we would want to be moving forward and agendizing soon specifically?
There is not. So it will be something now likely probably in end of May, early June. There will be a need to get something to the city council. We got time for that. So no.
Okay, great. All right, so chair reports. I want to give Jasenia a moment of time. If you would like to make an announcement, Jasenia.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. I've just been doing things. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I will be leaving and transitioning out of the Climate Action Committee because obviously I'm going to college. I've decided to go to Cal Poly Humboldt and go into environmental studies, and I am so excited and just, yeah, feeling all the things. And so I will be here at the meetings in May, and then I will not be here anymore. I'm pretty sure Argus will be taking my place. But yeah, it's been so amazing getting to know all of you, getting to learn so much about local government and just be a part of all this. I'm really grateful for all of you.
And we are grateful for you having spent so much of your senior year in high school sitting in this Zoom room with us. There are 2 youth seats. Argus will be coming over from Zero Waste, but we will now with Jasenia moving on to such an exciting, bright future. We will have an open spot. So if you know of young people in this community or teachers who may have students who would be interested, please encourage them to apply, and they should feel free to reach out to me if they need any assistance with their application. I'm also thinking of our youth, anybody who is available on April 21st. It is our local climate action night that is sponsored by the JC, and it's really, there's a number of sponsors, but it's a really great event where our young people in our community come and present education, like do public education on climate action legislation in front of the state. So if there is anyone who is available to attend that, it is a virtual event on the evening of April 21st. I'm happy to get you the link. I'm sure you probably all have it from various sources, but if not, happy to send you that link so that we can, as many of us as possible, can show up to support our youth who are teaching themselves and teaching all of us about pending legislation. I would love to solicit requests for agenda items to be coming in the future. Obviously, we have the energy code discussion and micromobility. We have a lot of things that are tabled. But we also have had some requests to review kind of how our process works as a committee. And we did get to some of that today prematurely with our discussion of hybrid versus in-person versus online. But that will be the bulk of our next meeting, including the project pipeline. But then after that, we will be coming back to all of these other issues moving forward. And I want to make sure that we are able to work in anything that is important time-wise to get to in the next couple of meetings, or just, exciting that you want to bring forward. Sonali?
Really quickly, Kari sent out a flyer that Yesenia had made to promote the art project. So if you could please post it to your social media network, share it with your friends, tell people about it. It's a nice looking graphic. So it should be in your email boxes. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonali. And I think we did get a submission for the art. Did that get to you? We scanned it, and I just want to make sure it got to you.
one that got scanned in and emailed. Yeah, we've had 5 or 6 so far.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks.
Great.
I just want to make sure my staff was sending it to the right folks.
Oh, thank you kindly. That was some time back, right? Okay.
Lisa?
I just wanted to say that project pipeline stuff that was written up I thought was excellent. I look forward to that discussion.
That was Alex. Thank you, Alex.
Good job, Alex. Really good job.
Yeah, very grateful to Alex for taking that on. All right, so anyone else want to make a case for agendizing anything in the next couple of meetings? I think we have our work cut out for us. Oh wait, I see Steve. Funding group is still looking for a grant funding needs proposal. Yes, thank you for bringing that back up.
Yeah, and on that, the budget subcommittee is doing their budget hearings, and I've been trying to keep you all updated because they're sort of generally don't know how long each department is going to take. But I do anticipate that given the order, I think blinding was after police, and police finished up last Thursday. So our next budget discussion is this coming Monday at 9 a.m. I think I posted the Zoom link to this group, but it's also will be on the city's website under the meeting tab. And so that is where climate action initiative funding and the climate action grant writer that this committee has recommended will be discussed. So if you're able to make that, I'm guessing there'll be public comment maybe around 9:30-ish. Maybe a little bit before, I'm not sure, but
okay. And
it starts at 9 in my department, I believe will be the next one up.
And that will be on the city council page on the City of Sebastopol website, or?
Yeah, it should be, yes. And it's actually, there's an easier link that I can just post here. We do have on the central page, we have I'll just show you so you all know where it is. If you just go to the main website, there's a meeting tab here, and that always, I'm sorry, I'm in preview mode. That always has upcoming meetings. So like, here's yours. It was here and flips over. So like, it's right, the link's right there.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
And if you ever need the climate action link, it will be there too, just for reference. Easy way to find it.
So I'm very sorry we're going a minute or two over here to review action items. I believe the main thing is that we're still working on those. A lot of you guys have written up needs for the funding group, but any more needs to attend that budget hearing if you can. And transportation is going to work on the micro mobility, kind of fleshing out an actual proposal for us. And of course, Phoebe continues her work at all times. So thank you all for coming today, and we will adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.